So we've been exploring this idea in Gloomhaven of building a tactics checklist, independent of the character you're playing, independent on where you are right now in the game, certain things that I try and keep in mind, that I would suggest keeping in mind as you run through every scenario. I'm going to be reviewing some of these tactics, and we're going to be looking at some options to consider for each of the character classes, starting only with the core classes. I'm not going to get into the unlocks. I'm not going to get into mission specifics, because so much of Gloomhaven is not only the looting and the leveling up and the playing, but also this idea of the legacy of the unlocks. And I don't want to spoil that for you in any way, because it really, really is an awesome part of the game. So with this checklist, Gloomhaven is interesting because there's, on the one hand, you have full choice. You have a deck of cards in your hand. You're selecting two cards. You're playing the top and the bottom. You're taking into account initiative. You're looking at some of your character abilities, also augmented if you're going to tap or utilize magic items and consumables. And then that's going to be modified in some way through the modifier deck, either making it stronger, a little bit weaker. There are a couple of misses in there, but for the most part, it's not dice-based. If we crunch the numbers, can even do that without dice. Most of the time, what you play is what you're going to get. Again, there are misses, but it'll either be a little bit stronger or a little bit weaker on there. That said, Gloomhaven is a timed base game. You are up against a timer. So you set up the dungeon, you're ready to go. As soon as the scenario starts, yes, you're going to go room by room and activation by activation, but every round you are getting weaker and weaker and weaker. So it's really a question of, can you slow down that process, right? You're playing cards from your hand to move or to attack. At some point, you're going to either short or long rest. That's going to allow you to refresh, but you're going to have some cards removed. On top of that, some of the really special abilities of each character, that's going to force that card to be removed. I won't say go all out in the beginning, but with hand management, even if you are really math and theory hammer, you're really playing it tight, you are getting weaker every single turn. Now, that can be augmented with consumables, depending on the level of Gloomhaven that you're playing there, with the magic items that are available. There are some other magic items out there in the wild that are going to help. Again, no spoilers, but that slows it down. What we throw into the mix now with enemies, their activations, because they're going to be running, moving, shooting, invoking certain conditions that when it hits you, now you're getting even weaker, whether that's taking life damage or taking card damage on there. Generally speaking, I prefer to take life damage. It's a little bit slower to heal up, but I want to try and keep as many cards in the deck as possible. That's kind of the insurance policy, to make sure you don't gas out and get killed with that, get knocked out. So we need to keep in mind that timer that's going on. So that's kind of the first thing, optimizing as best you can. In terms of priority, this is what I'm looking at. Obviously, the mission. What is the mission condition? It could be timer-based. A lot of the missions based on the scenarios are just go in there and take everybody out. It could be make it through a certain gauntlet, make it through certain areas on there. That's obviously number one, because if you don't complete the mission, anything that you've recovered along the way, you're not going to get. And on top of that, completing the mission allows potentially, usually, most of the time, unlocks, either in a chain of adventures. You know, you cleared this area, you found some sort of note, it leads to this area, linked scenarios, or it's going to open up other aspects of the board. So just on that nature, for more opportunity, more choices, more what the heck are we going to do next, completing the mission is important for the unlocks and for the permanence of what you gain. Second to that, experience. Now, this is hard, right? Personally, this is hard for me because I love loot. I love magic items, and I love leveling up with loot and magic items. But Gloomhaven is interesting compared to other dungeon crawler type games in that looting is not automatic. It is very, very, very tactical. And I'm, on a side note, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with this, but from a tactics play and a game design theory, it works so much better. So when the scenario ends, again, no spoilers, you got to figure it out yourself. When the game ends, at the end of the round, that's it. You have what you've looted, and if you don't, it's gone. Examine that compared to other type of dungeon-esque games where there might be loot in the scenario. As soon as you kill the boss monster or you get that, you clean out the dungeon, all that loot is automatically assigned. So what this means with Gloomhaven is you might not always be in the best position to grab, I call them the silver tokens, silver and gold, right? But they're just loot modifiers, or even if there's regular or advanced chests or even multiple chests on a map, you need to make some decisions. Do you go and wipe out everything? Meaning you get the lower initiative, you attack, you take out some of those bandits, you take out some of those living bones, you reduce the enemy monster's chance to affect your hand of cards by causing damage and reducing it faster than you can keep up. But if you do that, you get closer to the end win condition. So sometimes you don't want to kill everything right away, because especially if you're playing with a larger party, if you're playing with 3 or 4, then you want to kind of spread out. You want to kind of make sure that everyone gets a little bit of, gets their gold and gets their kind of piece of the pie on there. So this constant back and forth tactical doesn't make sense. As soon as it ends, that's it. It's over. But I understand what they were doing. So that said, the mission is first, but looting is not second. What is secondary is gaining experience points. Looking through your ability of cards and making sure that you play, if possible. I mean, there's so many combinations in the hand, but making sure that you play cards with experience to gain the experience on there. That's unlocking so much. Not only does it make the characters more fun to play, but it gives you a lot more power and optimizes things to run through the dungeon quicker. Now, yes, playing at that chart, that matrix of where you're going to be, you're playing a level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3 dungeon versus the characters. You can scale it up or down. The dungeons are going to gain in power as you go and the missions as they unlock, but it's nice to be ahead of that curve. So we want to make sure mission first, experience second, earning experience second. This is where loot comes in third on there. And the loot, I'm going to break it down into 2 categories. And I'm not going to give any spoilers, but pretty much after you run through the first mission, you're going to have an idea of how this works. There are 3 ways to loot. One is items that might be on a boss or as part of a scenario that you're going to be aware to get upon completion. Second, through chests, base level, silver or gold, or level 1, level 2, whatever we're going to call it. That's going to be in the scenario. It's not going to tell you what's in there, which is great. It's going to tell you, add this card to the deck or take this action. So you're going to get something really good. And then there are the individual silver and gold tokens that get scattered about. Sometimes they're near a chest and you can pick them up on your way in. Sometimes they're not with that. The priority is the chests. The priority is adding cards. Anything in Gloomhaven, kind of like Gloomhaven 101, anything you can do to add a card or unlock a location, that's a higher priority than going and sucking up every loot token that you possibly can on the map. Although we need gold. We need it. You want to use it, especially for consumables. That makes the difference between life and death in so many missions. And don't be afraid to play a consumable, because you'll have opportunity to purchase more on there as they return to the deck. There's no reason to hold on to it if you think it's going to lead to a mission failure. But having that priority be, I want to get the chest first, the gold second. That's my checklist through there. That's the checklist that I try and navigate. Those are the questions that I ask every turn as I play. Now, obviously, playing solo, controlling 2 characters, things are going to be a little bit more challenging because you have advanced knowledge and coordinate everything and exactly what you want to do. Compared to playing with other players, you can't say the exact card you're going to play, but you can kind of give some idea and talk tactics, which is important every turn. But again, you're going to get weaker and weaker and weaker. The question is, what can you do tactically to slow that down, slow that internal game timer down, while building in a little bit to make sure that when the game ends, not only are you not gassed out, but everyone is in a position where they need to be to get the maximum loot that they can.